So, I want to read you the story of the Clothesline Code. It's the story of Civil War spies Lucy Ann and Dabney Walker. And we just were talking in 5th grade about how Anna Strong used a clothesline for her code during the American Revolution, and so I was really excited to find another book that had to do with espionage and clothes. So here we go. Let's get into it. And it's dedicated for the thousands of black people who helped the Union in ways large and small, and often at great risk to themselves, win the Civil War, and for the crowds of protesters of all races marching today to demand changes to ensure that black lives of today and the future truly do matter. All right, and then we have an author's note. I'll show you the artwork that goes with that author's note. And it says, "This story of Lucy Ann Dabney Walker is true to the known facts of their lives and the society of their time. I had to imagine some scenes and thoughts, but they are based on documented events and actions. Although many Union scouts wore civilian clothes, we have pictured Dabney in an Army uniform. We did that because Union Captain George F. Noyes wrote in 1863 that Dabney sallied forth with military cap, blue coat, as the usual guide for the cavalry." All right, so let's get into it. Dabney Walker stared up the hill, captivated by the Union soldiers waving red and white flags. 2 soldiers took turns holding a long flagpole and waving the flag to the right and the left, over and over again, with dash and flourish. 52-year-old Dabney had just been assigned to the camp's brand new intelligence unit, and he wanted to know more about these flags. He asked the officer leading the flag drill to explain what the movements meant. So you can see in the background that big bright flag. The officer told Dabney that the flag waving was a code meant for communicating across long distances on a battlefield. The code was simple, but it worked extremely well. A flag waved to the left stood for the number 1. A flag waved to the right stood for the number 2. Different combinations of these 2 numbers stood for each letter of the alphabet. Strung together, the letters spelled out messages. To make things clearer, the officer offered to demonstrate the letter C. He called out, 212, and a soldier trained as a flagman whipped the flag to his right, then to his left, then to his right again, swiftly and precisely. And so I love the picture. You can see them there, and then you can see him waving the flag. Isn't that so clever? Excited, Dabney hurried off to locate his wife, Lucy Ann. He found her, as usual, under the clothesline, hard at work as a camp laundress. The couple and their teenage daughter, Sarah, had fled slavery and escaped to this Union camp in northeast Virginia about a year earlier. Since then, Dabney had worked as a cook and a valued scout for the camp, a Union stronghold in the otherwise slave state. As a native Virginian, Dabney was so skilled at finding the hiding places of the enemy Confederate Army that they offered a $1,500 reward for his head. Now in early 1863, the Union camp's new leader, Major General Joseph Hooker, wanted to know every detail about the Confederate Army. He was especially interested in General Robert E. Lee's forces directly across the Rappahannock River from the Union camp. Dabney was ready and determined to be the best spy ever. Learning how the flag sent messages gave him a big idea. And in my class, we talk a lot about the people who have been left out of history books, but that were there experiencing and participating in history unfolding. And in both the American Revolution and the Civil War, are going to be families, full families, or women that are called camp followers, and they are the ones that are preparing the food for the soldiers, that are cleaning their clothes, that are helping the wounded, doing all of these things that make it so that the soldiers can fight and continue going. And so I just love that in this book they're including the wife and just showing how she's always working really hard as a camp follower doing laundry. All right. Dabney grabbed a pillowcase and put it on the end of a stick. He waved it first to his right, then to his left, then to his right again, explaining to Lucy Ann that the movement stood for the letter C. He told her he wanted to come up with their own signals. Then they could sneak into the Confederate headquarters across the river and use the signals to send secrets back to the Union camp. Lucy Ann was eager to help, but she wondered what they could use instead of letters. When they were enslaved, Dabney and Lucy Ann hadn't been allowed to learn to read and write. Plus, they needed something that was easy to see across the river, but wouldn't attract unwanted attention. So you can see him waving it, the pillowcase, and then you can see her thinking. The couple thought long and hard, all the while washing the laundry on the clothesline, whipping in the wind. Then it hit them. They could use laundry on a clothesline to send signals across the river. For Lucy Ann, who had spent her entire life washing clothes for others, the idea made perfect sense. But Dabney had second thoughts. If they used laundry to signal, Lucy Ann would have to be the one to go into enemy territory to steal and send Confederate secrets. If the enemy found out she was a spy, she would almost certainly be hanged. But Lucy Ann had made up her mind, and that was it. The couple had already faced grave dangers by escaping slavery. Both were willing to take more risks to help others gain freedom. Creating the Clothesline Code was a huge job. The Confederate Army was spread out in different units. Lucy Ann and Dabney had to create a unique laundry code to represent each unit. The couple picked different colored shirts to stand for the forces of each Confederate leader. Gray for the Confederate General John Longstreet, white for General A.P. Hill, and red for General Stonewall Jackson. Lucy Ann and Dabney plotted how they would move each general's shirt to show the movement of his forces. Removing the gray Longstreet shirt from the line would signal that his troops had moved nearer to Richmond, Virginia. Moving Hill's white shirt up the clothesline would mean his unit had moved upstream, and on and on. A separate clothesline would signal what was happening at General Lee's headquarters across the river. A single item on the line would mean that Lee and his soldiers were on the move. 2 pieces would signal no change. 3 would warn that Lee was adding more troops to his forces. The couple practiced the laundry movements again and again. Soon they both felt ready. Now they just needed a way to sneak Lucy Ann across the river. Oh my goodness, they are so clever and brave. Wow. In mid-February, an opportunity arose. Camp soldiers were helping a Confederate woman living in the Union-occupied area travel safely to visit friends across the river. Lucy Ann hid her face with a shawl and pretended to be the woman's servant. Lucy Ann's heart raced with fear that she would be stopped, but she forced herself to stay calm. The trick worked, and she was allowed on the boat. Once, on the opposite shore, Lucy Ann slipped away unseen towards the Confederate headquarters. As she ran, she constantly looked all around to make sure no one saw her. Lucy Ann knew she faced harsh punishment, or even death if she was caught. At General Lee's camp, she joined a group of enslaved workers doing laundry and acted as though she had been there all along. Soon she was washing clothes and cooking for General Lee and his officers. She and Dabney were ready to spy. There's her hiding her face to sneak in, and then this is her taking up a position doing laundry. Before long, Dabney was providing vital information to Union officers about the enemy's movement, sometimes even before they happened. The officers puzzled over how he was getting such timely and accurate intelligence. For a long time, Dabney kept the Clothesline Code a secret from the soldiers to keep Lucy Ann safe. Finally, after much pleading from the camp officers, he took one of them to a high point with a clear view across the river. Dabney pointed and asked the officer if he could see a cabin with a clothesline. The officer looked through his field glasses and nodded. "Well," said Dabney, "that clothesline tells me in half an hour just what goes on at Lee's headquarters." Dabney explained that his wife worked at the Confederate headquarters and secretly listened closely to everything being said there. The body servants of Confederate officers also shared secrets with her. When Lucy Ann had information, she headed to the clothesline. She was careful not to rush or attract attention that might endanger her or her chance to spy. She kept clothes on the line at all times so as not to arouse suspicion. The Clothesline Code could even handle tricky situations. One morning, Dabney reported lots of movement by the Confederate Army. But, he said, they're just making believe. Surprised, an officer asked Dabney how he knew the enemy was playing a trick. Dabney pointed to Lucy Ann's clothesline, at the 2 blankets pinned together. He explained this was Lucy Ann's signal for troops being moved just to confuse the Union. Why, that's her way of making a fish trap. And when she pins the clothes together in a way, it means that Lee is only trying to draw us into his fish trap. Oh my goodness, that's so neat. Then one day, the laundry fell silent. Not a single piece moved. For days. Had something happened to scare Lucy Ann? Had she been found out or put in jail? Dabney's heart throbbed with dread that his wife was in danger. He couldn't eat or sleep. He feared she might have been hanged. For several long days, he watched and worried, his heart aching and his fears growing. But still, no clothes moved. Finally, the laundry signaled again. Oh, what a relief. Dabney jumped up and down, punching the air with joy that Lucy Ann was all right. Day after day until late April, Lucy Ann made the laundry whisper its secrets, and Dabney and the Union officers paid close attention. Oh, that must have been such a relief to see the laundry move. With the onset of spring and good weather, it was time for General Hooker to lead his troops into battle. General Hooker had a bold plan to take the Confederate forces by surprise. Thanks to the Walkers, the Union Army was ready. General Hooker's spy unit had given him a clearer picture of the enemy than at any time since the war began. For that he owed many thanks, including the brave and dedicated Walkers. An officer praised the couple as being among the promptest and most reliable of General Hooker's spies. Lucy Ann and Dabney took tremendous risks to their lives in order to help others on the long journey towards freedom. Oh, that's so good. And there's an afterword, so I'm going to just read you the afterword, but yay. Okay, here we go. From 1861 to 1865, the northern and southern states of the United States fought a civil war, primarily over slavery. Southerners wanted slavery to be legal in the nation's new territories, and Northerners did not. A bitter division caused 11 southern slave states, including Virginia, where the Walkers lived, to leave the United States and form the Confederate States of America. The northern states remained the United States of America, or the Union. In the spring of 1863, despite General Hooker being extremely well informed about the enemy, thanks to the Walkers and other Union spies, the Union lost the battle now known as the Battle of Chancellorsville. After the defeat, the Union troops again settled for several weeks on the northern bank of the Rappahannock River. Thankfully, Lucy Ann somehow managed to escape back to the safety of Union lines. No record exists of why her laundry signals had stopped for a time. When the Union Army left Virginia in June 1863 for battle elsewhere, the Walkers headed to Washington, D.C., their part-time home since September of 1862. They lived in Washington when they weren't needed by the Union Army. While in D.C., Dabney helped create military maps in the city with Union Captain William H. Payne during November and December of 1862. In May of 1864, Dabney again returned to Virginia to scout for the Union Army during its drive towards Richmond. It is unknown whether Lucy Ann went with him or stayed in Washington. Following the war, the Walkers continued to live in Washington, D.C. Dabney worked as a carpenter and laborer, and Lucy Ann as a laundress. Along with 6 other formerly enslaved men, Dabney founded the Fifth Baptist Church, it's now Vermont Avenue Baptist in Washington, D.C., on June 5, 1866. The church was the scene of Sarah Walker's marriage in 1871 to Charles Barnes of Maryland. The couple had 2 children. Unfortunately, little is known of the Walker family's life in Washington. Lucy Ann died at age 66 on June 12, 1880. Dabney remarried Rosie Dean in 1881. He died at age 74 on April 23, 1885. Lucy Ann Dabney and their daughter and grandchildren were buried at Mount Pleasant Plain Cemetery, Walter Pierce Park in Washington, D.C. So pretty cool. This was so fun. I'm really, really glad that I got to read this book with you guys. And on the back page, there's a whole bunch of different references, so maybe I'll do a little more research about this. But I hope you guys enjoyed the Clothesline Code, and I'll see you later. Bye.